Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. Today, the rising tensions in the Middle East as President Trump is reportedly considering new military options for striking Iran, with U.S. increasing its forces in the region and Iran threatening counterattacks. We'll bring you the latest from Jerusalem. How China has gained a foothold here in the Western Hemisphere, in Venezuela. We'll look at how China used it for military advantage and the impact of President Trump's removal of Nicolas Maduro. And our Studio 5 conversation with Brunes Charles, who could win a Grammy Award this weekend for Best Gospel Songwriter, even though he never saw himself as a writer. Plus, with another major storm bearing down on parts of the U.S., we'll see how some children in Tennessee used last weekend's storm to have some fun in the ice and snow. These stories and much more today on NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And we begin in the Middle East, where tensions are intensifying, with warships moving into position. Still, President Trump says he's planning to talk with Tehran. And Iranian leaders are warning they'll retaliate if the U.S. strikes. CBN News Middle East correspondent Joshua Swanson brings us the story from Jerusalem.
Another U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Delbert D. Black, is now operating in Middle East waters, bringing the total number of American destroyers in the area to 6, along with an aircraft carrier and additional combat ships. The buildup comes as Iran reportedly received a new shipment of 1,000 drones and prepares for the possibility of direct confrontation. Iranian military leaders are openly threatening U.S. forces, warning that any American strike would be met without delay. The IRGC Army spokesman said on state television a decisive response will be delivered instantly, adding that U.S. bases and aircraft carriers are within the range of our medium-range missiles. At the same time, President Trump says he's had conversations with Iran and is planning more. The president also pointed to the growing U.S. military presence, saying the United States has a lot of very big, very powerful ships sailing to Iran right now, adding that it would be great if they were not used. In Jerusalem, Israeli leaders are preparing for the possibility of another conflict with Iran. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a high-level security consultation on what officials described as a classified topic. Reports say the briefing focused on the possibility of a U.S. strike, along with concerns that Israel could face significant retaliation. The Israeli Mossad chief, David Barnea, is in Washington meeting with top U.S. officials amid conflicting signals over U.S. readiness to act. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the U.S. military is fully prepared to carry out President Trump's decision. Speaking during a cabinet meeting, Hegseth warned Iran against pursuing nuclear weapons.
Should not pursue nuclear capabilities. We will be prepared to deliver whatever this president expects of the War Department.
He added that the administration is focused on restoring deterrence and making clear that America's warnings should be taken seriously.
When President Trump said we're not getting a nuclear Iran, you won't have a nuclear bomb, he meant it. And we sent those B-2s halfway around the world, and they never noticed.
Adding to the pressure on Tehran, the European Union has now designated Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, citing its violent crackdown on protesters.
In Iran, horrific crackdown on protesters has come at a heavy human cost. The EU already has sweeping sanctions in place, and today ministers agreed to designate Iran Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization.
The designation gives EU governments the authority to use their strongest counterterrorism measures far beyond standard sanctions. Meanwhile, Iran's Revolutionary Guard is signaling defiance, announcing plans to conduct live-fire naval exercises in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway through which much of the world's oil supply passes. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Joshua. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is with us now from Jerusalem. Chris, the world is on the edge of its seat. You know, the Times of Israel says a strike on Iran is expected within days. The New York Times reports President Trump considering new military options. What can you tell us?
Well, Wendy, he's got an expanded range of military options. He could hit Iran's nuclear program. He could hit the long-range missile infrastructure, and that's something Israelis would love to see. Possible special forces raids inside Iran. You know, there's a Channel 12 report here, Wendy, where they actually interviewed a Mossad operative who says he was inside Iran during last year's 12-day war. They were launching strikes against targets inside Iran, and he got out as well. So it's likely that the Mossad as well, not just the U.S., has boots on the ground right now inside Iran. And as you said, the whole region right now has been waiting to see if and when a strike takes place. You know, President Trump's method, his M.O., he wants to use overwhelming force. He would love to see a quick win. The question, Wendy, a lot of people are asking, will it be enough to topple the regime?
Yes, absolutely. That's the question. Well, Chris, Iran may have been battered by last year's war with the U.S. and Israel, but is it still capable of launching these deadly strikes?
Well, apparently they seem to have thousands of ballistic, cruise, and short-range missiles. They have, you know, as Joshua said in his report, about 1,000 drones that were just delivered. So they have one of the largest arsenals in the Middle East. They could reach U.S. bases. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Senate testimony, he was saying there's about 8 or 9 U.S. bases in the region, about 30 to 40,000 U.S. servicemen and women, so they're in range. But arrayed against all this arsenal that Iran has is a multi-layered anti-missile system. The Arrow, the David Sling, Iron Dome, Patriot, THAAD systems are all here in the region. And then you have several nations working together to shoot down these ballistic missiles, UAVs and drones. And then there could be a preemptive strike by either the U.S. or Israel to hit those missile launches even before they launch.
Chris, would airstrikes be enough to bring down the Iranian regime, or would this take boots on the ground?
You know, that's such a great question, and that's what a lot of people are saying. Many experts say it's unlikely, but I heard not too long ago General Jack Keane from the Institute of War saying it could help eventually topple the regime. So, and it could lead perhaps to a defection by some in the military, and that would be a key. Many say if the military would turn against the regime, that would really could be a turning point and really lead to a toppling of the regime.
And what is exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi urging for Iran's future? What is he saying?
Well, he's really got a comprehensive plan to what happens if and when the regime falls. He's calling for a democratic, secular transition to end the regime right now. He wants the future of Iran to be decided by the Iranian people, not by any foreign powers or the clerical regime. And he wants this regime changed through a popular uprising. And right now, he's urging Iranians, because that's very difficult right now to actually go in the streets to mass protests, but he wants to weaken, eventually end the regime. He's asking as well for international support for the protesters and then targeted measures against the regime's security apparatus. That's the sort of the Bajij, the people out there in the streets, literally murdering thousands, tens of thousands of their own citizens. And as Joshua said, the EU just designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization. That's the kind of action that Reza Pahlavi is looking for, and he wants a democratic, secular Iran. And many people are hoping for what's called the Cyrus Accords. Wendy, actually more than 2,000 years ago, there was a great relationship between the people of Persia and the Jewish people, and many people are hoping for that relationship to be restored once again.
Amen. Let it be. Well, what are you hearing about what's going on with the church in Iran? I know there's a lot of believers there, and I know they're praying.
Yeah, no, Wendy, CBN News is reporting on the church in Iran. Believers, the fastest growing church in the world, according to many. Miracles, signs, and wonders, visitations by Jesus. And we are hearing they are part of the protests. They are praying. They are praying for the people in the streets and aiding the protesters. And really just a reminder of how many people need to be praying for the church in Iran, for those protesters, so they could finally have freedom once again.
And Chris, you, of course, have a great show called Jerusalem Dateline. Tell us what you've got coming up on today's show.
Well, there's so many things happening in the region right now in Israel. So we have updates on the latest of what's happening in the region. We have a story on Netanyahu's red lines. He's talking about Gaza, and he's talking about no foreign, boots on the ground inside Gaza. We also have a story on an international conference on anti-Semitism that was held here in Jerusalem, and a powerful speech by an Australian rabbi, and he says, you know, it's not a policy anti-Semitism, it's real, because he's lost friends in that attack in Sydney in December, and he says anti-Semitism is an empty seat at a Shabbat table. Also, a report from Mount Hermon, and we also have an interview with Shamarn Heading about how jihadists are going house to house in northeast Syria right now looking for Christians, so they need prayer as well.
That's a jam-packed show. You need more than 30 minutes. I think we need an hour. Anyways.
It sounds like that.
Yeah. CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, always great to see you. Thank you so much for your insights. We look forward to hearing from you in the days ahead. You can see the latest Jerusalem Dateline at 8 p.m. Eastern on the CBN News channel. You can also watch it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Coming up, how China used Venezuela under former leader Nicolas Maduro, not only for cheap oil, but also for military advantages. We'll bring you that story when we come back.
Introducing a brand new way to start your morning. Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Discover how God is moving around the world and here at home. Plus, get exclusive stories and daily scripture encouragement just for you. Stay informed. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
When he was leading Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro courted U.S. adversaries, including China. The raid removing him did major damage to one of Beijing's most important partnerships in Latin America. It may have also placed Taiwan in grave danger. CBN's Dale Hurd explains why.
These are Chinese government special forces conducting a so-called decapitation drill, only days after U.S. forces arrested Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. It was Beijing's message to Washington that it can do the same thing against Taiwan. The successful U.S. raid on Venezuela has struck a major blow to China's strategy in Latin America, according to China expert Gordon Chang.
Well, China has used Venezuela as its beachhead, and it's a very important country for China. China used Venezuela not only as, a place to get cheap oil, but it also was a place very much for military penetration.
Venezuela had become the largest purchaser of Chinese military equipment in Latin America, some of which failed miserably during the U.S. raid. According to Latin American analyst Dr. Evan Ellis, the event will not remove Chinese influence in Venezuela overnight. It's too vast.
It's also in the mineral sector, working with Corporación Venezolana de Guyana, CBG. It's also deeply embedded in the telecommunications sector, in the retail sector, and in other places.
China has infrastructure projects all over Latin America, from ports to rail, factories, mines, and hydroelectric plants. However, in Venezuela, it was building infrastructure that could be used for war against the United States.
If we ever went to war with the PRC in the Indo-Pacific, their ability to use access to Western Hemisphere space to target U.S. satellites and indeed perhaps communicate with some of their own offensive vehicles, they have something called a fractional orbital bombardment system, would be very important.
To kill orbiting U.S. satellites.
And the loss of Maduro is only the latest in a series of setbacks for Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
There are reports Xi is purging the military after what some say was a coup attempt. Chang says the nation remains mired in a social and economic malaise, with young people refusing to have children. The birth rate last year hit the lowest level since the Communist Revolution in 1949.
And that's why they call this the garbage time in history, and why people in China are extremely pessimistic about the direction of their country.
Under pressure from Trump, some Latin American nations may be cooling toward China. However, Victor Gao, considered an unofficial spokesman for the Chinese government, says China has no intention of leaving Latin America, telling Singapore TV channel CNA.
President Trump and the U.S. government's pretense that they can resurrect the Monroe Doctrine or insert the Monroe Doctrine to Latin America is completely false. China will never allow that to happen. If they want to have war, they will get war.
And in a recent war game, Chinese forces fought a simulated battle in Latin America. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Still ahead, we'll introduce you to the man who wrote these lyrics. Teach me how to have church on a Monday. Brunes Charles talks to us about the message behind the Grammy-nominated song right after this. When the Grammy Awards are handed out this weekend, the prize for Best Gospel Songwriter could go to a man who never saw himself as a writer at all. Brunes Charles is the son of Haitian immigrants who dreamed of becoming a TV producer. He sat down with CBN's Ephraim Graham to share the story behind his Grammy-nominated song, Church.
Where is the choir? I can't hear them singing. Where is the preacher? I can't hear him preaching.
Sitting here on the heels of a Grammy nomination.
Who would have known? I don't consider myself a writer.
Where is that feeling?
I had the music side, the producing side, but in terms of like writing a song, I never saw myself as writing a song. And so one day I just decided to own it. I was like, hey, I may not be able to write like you guys, but I can paint a story and I can give different concepts. And I think by doing it more, I eventually got better. And now I'm nominated for the first time ever as a writer, writing a song that Tasha Cobbs and John Legend is on.
Now I'm understanding you're more than a building when the service is over.
I literally could cry just sitting back thinking of how far God has brought me. And I listen to John Legend all the time on the radio, and I'd play his songs on the piano. And I'm talking to you, and I'm like, I wrote a song that he is singing.
You'll meet me right here, and God, I'll be waiting. Oh, what a feeling.
I love what you posted when you got word of the Grammy. You said, yesterday I found out I'm nominated for a Grammy as a songwriter. I never saw myself as that, but God did. Every insecurity, every moment of doubt, he still covered me. I used to find excuses not to show up because I didn't feel qualified. But grace has a way of qualifying you for what you thought was beyond you. To whoever needs it, walk in the room and let God be God.
Yes, sir.
Is that a hard lesson for you to learn?
Ooh, it was a hard lesson for me to learn because I would say not up until a couple of years ago, I would walk in the room that God would place me in and try to do it myself. The more I surrendered to God, it gave me a better picture of why am I in these rooms? And what's the assignment in these rooms when I walk in? Is it to come up with the most words? Or is it to just be who I'm supposed to be and let God just shine through me in that? And once I figured that part out, everything else became easier. Like we would come in the rooms and we'd just be like, hey, what are you going through today? And that would birth a song, you know? And just like church, we walked into the room and I was just like, man, how's everybody feeling? And from that conversation, the idea of church was birthed.
God, it's just you and me now. Tell me what to do now. Teach me how to have church on a Monday.
Any lines stand out for you?
Teach us how to have church on a Monday. Because church is easy on Sunday.
Yeah.
It is. And the hardest day is Monday when everything goes back. You got to worry about work, life, kids, environment, the world. I think church has a way of, it's almost an escape from reality. Once you leave those four walls, it's a different story, and you got responsibilities and other things that you have to answer to. And so we were asking for the same grace that we find and same peace that we find on Sunday. Like, how do we find that on Monday? Church is really good on Sunday, but what about Monday? What about Tuesday? What about Wednesday when you got to go through the week? And that's the line for me. Teach us how to have church on the hardest day, not when it's easy.
Teach us how to have church.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Love it. We're coming up with more snow on the way. We'll see how some kids in Tennessee had fun after last week's big storm. We'll have that story when we come back.
Something has been happening on campuses across the nation.
Gen Z has been written off.
It looked like everything was okay when deep down it wasn't.
I think they've had everything the world has to offer and they're done with it.
You all are a part of a generation that God is sparking revival and it is spreading.
It's just getting started.
Available now.
Well, get ready. Another major winter storm is set to hit parts of the U.S. this weekend, and many Americans may find themselves stuck at home. But some kids in Tennessee made some fun out of last weekend's storm. These kids in Memphis took advantage of a snow day to build a makeshift igloo with large chunks of ice. Memphis dodged significant ice accumulations during the winter storm that hit many parts of the U.S., but kids there got to enjoy a day to play and build using ice blocks, just like the Eskimos, that built up off a driveway. So maybe you can have some fun this weekend, but if you do go out, be sure to stay safe and drive safely. It is definitely supposed to come here towards the East Coast where we are, and I, for one, am ready for it. Bring it on. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen today. Reach out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. God bless.